They called it Station Eos, the last outpost on the edge of known space. Suspended in eternal twilight above the scorched planet Zira 7, Eos orbited a world of long-buried secrets. The planet below had once teemed with life, intelligent life, if the skeletal cities and cyclopean structures were to be believed. But now, it was a graveyard, silent and desolate, wrapped in dust storms and bathed in red light from a dying sun. Dr. Mara Ellen arrived with the third wave of scientists. A linguist by training, she had spent most of her career unearthing forgotten languages in digital ruins and fragmented archives. When the Zira ruins were discovered and shown to contain markings, unlike any script, glyph, or symbol known to man, she was summoned like a conjured spirit. Her reputation preceded her. Her specialty was deciphering the undecipherable. The first months were quiet, methodical. The ruins on the planet were too unstable to work in directly, so large slabs of etched stone and strange crystal panels were extracted and brought to Eos. At first glance, the markings seemed random. Interlocking lines, spirals, and occasional pulsating colors that shimmered just beyond the visible spectrum. But Mara didn't believe in randomness. Not in language. Language had structure, meaning, purpose. She began to see patterns where others saw chaos. Certain spirals always appeared near vertical jagged strokes. Some colors only shimmered when viewed at precise angles. It wasn't written for eyes, she thought. This was meant to be processed differently. Read differently. Her breakthrough came on day 142. She'd been studying a hexagonal panel, black crystal etched with silver grooves, when she closed her eyes in frustration, overwhelmed by the cacophony of interpretations that refused to coalesce into meaning. But in the darkness behind her eyelids, she saw it. A shimmer. A shape that twisted not in space but in cognition. It was like hearing a sentence in a language she didn't know, and somehow understanding it. The language wasn't visual or auditory. It was mental, a cognitive impression etched into reality itself. Reading it wasn't passive. It required the mind to twist, to conform to the message like metal bending under heat. Once the form settled in her consciousness, something changed. First, she chalked it up to exhaustion, a dissonance in perception. Lights on the station seemed brighter, sounds sharper. People's expressions lingered a beat longer than normal, as if trailing echoes of hidden intentions. But then came the dreams. They weren't dreams, not truly. They were too lucid, too consistent. Geometric corridors spiraling inward. Voices humming in harmonic convergence. And always a presence, a watcher, pressing against the walls of her mind. Not malevolent, just curious. Mara didn't tell anyone. She documented her progress in encrypted logs, knowing instinctively that the language should not be shared. Not yet. It wasn't meant to be spoken or replicated in symbols. The act of translating it into any human medium degraded its essence. But once the structure took root in her mind, it began to grow. Others on the station started to notice. "Are you okay, Mara?" Dr. Hayes asked her one morning, eyes darting toward her as though expecting an answer from someone else. "You've been different." She smiled, a small tilt of her head. "You're just not seeing clearly." By the end of the second week, she could predict conversations before they happened. Her understanding of language, of tone and cadence and subtext, had sharpened to a razor's edge. She could speak a sentence and guide someone's thoughts in directions they didn't understand. Not persuasion, reconstruction. But the language wasn't done with her. More researchers began to experience anomalies. Temporal glitches, visual loops, déjà vu that repeated endlessly until someone screamed themselves awake. No one traced it to Mara. Not yet. But she knew. The language was infectious. Once planted in a mind, it rewrote neural pathways. a mimetic virus. But unlike traditional mind viruses, propaganda, religious dogma, ideology, this one changed the rules. Perception, after all, shaped reality. What the mind perceived as real, the body followed. The language had no words for impossible. It simply bypassed that concept entirely. She began conducting small tests, left strange sequences in view of security monitors. Not full glyphs, just partial impressions. Afterward, guards reported migraines, vision distortions. One even described seeing a second shadow moving out of sync with him. Mara recorded it all. Dr. Hayes disappeared on day 173. They said he must have gotten lost in one of the atmospheric elevators. Malfunction, they said. But Mara knew better. He'd asked too many questions. She had caught him staring at her logs. And then, one night, she found him scrawling a crude spiral pattern in his sleep with a stylus on his palm. The language had begun infecting him. She erased the glyph before he woke up. But it was too late. The others began falling soon after. Mara no longer needed the panels. The language was in her now. She could project it. With a look, a hum, a subtle movement of her hands. Every time someone heard her speak, their thoughts bent toward her rhythm. Every sentence was a seed. Some grew slowly. Others cracked minds open instantly. She was careful at first, selective, but the station was a closed loop. 74 personnel. One became 5, then a dozen. By the time Central Command tried to reach her, the crew was no longer entirely human in thought. They still looked the same, moved the same, but their minds had learned new shapes, new paths. The language didn't control them, it freed them. That's how Mara saw it. Human language, with all its limits, had been a cage. This new form, this alien linguistic virus, transcended grammar. It was raw comprehension, direct transmission of meaning, emotion, intent. It was pure. Command sent a ship to investigate the communication silence. Mara welcomed them aboard. None returned. It wasn't violent. It was efficient. A conversation here. A symbol left etched subtly into a coffee cup. A lullaby hummed in a minor key. The language did the rest. Minds unraveled, then reformed. Eos became a beacon, a lighthouse on the edge of a crumbling shore. Mara began transmitting coded signals into deep space. Not messages in the traditional sense, but hooks, fragments of the language designed to embed in machine code. When decoded by AI or researchers, they would bloom like seeds dropped in fertile soil. Back on Earth, small anomalies started surfacing. Artists painting spirals in their sleep. Children speaking in perfect syntactic inversions. Coders experiencing hyperfocus and writing recursive functions that couldn't be traced to any known logic. Mara watched it all from her station above the red world. The ruins on 07 had gone silent again, but only because their purpose was complete. The language had been preserved, and now it was alive once more, grafting itself onto the consciousness of a new species. Not everyone would adapt. Some minds broke under the strain, unable to accommodate the new perception models. They saw too much. Time folding in on itself. Causal loops where none should exist. Realities phasing in and out like faulty projections. But Mara believed it was evolution. Painful, yes, but essential. One night, if night even existed in a place like Eos, she stood alone in the observatory. The stars drifted lazily beyond the glass, and below, 07 pulsed faintly like a slumbering giant. She reached out a hand and traced a symbol in the condensation on the window. It shimmered briefly, then vanished. Behind her, a child laughed. There were no children aboard Station Eos. Not yet.